The sky was gray the morning my children took everything from me. I remember the call like it happened 5 minutes ago. Grant's voice, polite, clipped, rehearsed. "Hey, Mom. We're stopping by today to help sort through a few things." Help. That word should have tipped me off. I just finished my morning routine. A hot cup of Earl Grey, the birdsong from the old willow in the yard, my wicker chair creaking on the porch floorboards like it had for the past 38 years. This house on Sycamore Lane was more than where I lived. It was where I became me. Where my late husband, Robert, and I built a life from beans and rice, extra shifts, and secondhand dreams. After he died, the house became a heartbeat I could still hear in every creak and shadow. At 71, I was still sharp. Sure, I misplaced keys once, in a while, or forgot where I set my reading glasses, but that's hardly cause for panic. I managed just fine. I tidied up the house that morning, even though it didn't need it. I baked coffee cake, Grant's favorite, just like Robert's mother taught me. I even set out their mugs. Melissa's World's Best Lawyer, Grant's University of Michigan Alumni Cup, and Brian's chipped blue one from his high school pottery class. They walked in like they were running a board meeting, not visiting their mother. Grant first, buttoned up and blank-eyed, like he was delivering bad news to a shareholder. At 45, he looked so much like Robert it made my chest ache. But Robert's eyes always held warmth. Grant's had gone cold long ago. Melissa followed, heels clicking, hair slicked back in a severe bun. The corporate armor she wore was almost comical, like she thought she could intimidate me with her tailored suit. At 42, she'd become as emotionally distant as her legal briefs. And Brian, the baby of the family at 38, brought in a folder I knew I wasn't going to like. He had the kindest heart of the three once, but today, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Coffee. Cake?" I asked, voice steady. "No thanks, Mom," Grant said, glancing at his watch. "We've got a lot to go over." That was when the room shifted. Melissa softened her voice into that high-pitched, "we're concerned" tone people use when they're about to crush your life. "We've been talking." Those words are a prelude to war. She started painting, a picture of a luxurious place called Autumn Hollow Residence. Like she was describing a resort brochure instead of the beige prison I'd soon discover it was. Private rooms, wellness checks, call buttons, cafeteria food, daily bingo. They made it sound like Club Med for the nearly dead. "I'm not going anywhere," I said flatly. "This is my home." Grant cleared his throat. "Be reasonable. This house is too much to manage." I manage just fine. Naomi from next door mows the lawn, and I've got a cleaner every month. Brian slid the folder across the table. "You've been forgetting things," he said quietly. "It's for your safety." "Forgetting things?" I nearly laughed. "I forgot one dentist appointment once." Melissa folded her arms. "You left the stove on twice this month." "Once," I said. "And I caught it." "The neighbor saw you in your robe," she added. I scoffed. "Getting the mail." It was clear they'd rehearsed this. Every argument I made bounced off their armor. This wasn't a discussion. It was a sentence. Then Brian said it. "You already signed over power of attorney." I froze. "What?" "The papers I brought to the hospital last year. After your gallbladder surgery," he said. "You were groggy, but you signed them." I remembered that. He said it was just in case something happened under anesthesia. Just for medical decisions. Turns out I'd been wrong. Dead wrong. "We're selling the house," Grant announced. "My house?" I whispered. "The one your father and I paid off 30 years ago. The one you grew up in?" "It's too big, Mom," Melissa said, not meeting my eyes. "The proceeds will help cover Autumn Hollow." "And the rest of the money?" I asked. Grant fidgeted. "We'll manage it for your future care." That was when I saw the truth. They weren't doing this for me. They were doing it for my assets. My house in a hot Asheville neighborhood was more valuable than I was to them. I didn't even get to choose what I packed. In 2 hours, they reduced my life to one suitcase and a smiley brochure. Melissa picked a family photo for my room, a forced smile vacation shot from Florida. I would have chosen the black and white picture of Robert and me on our wedding day. When we reached the door, I paused to run my hand over the door frame, the one with pencil marks recording every inch my kids ever grew. Soon it'd all be painted, over, forgotten. They drove me away in silence. I memorized every street, every porch, every hydrangea bush. I watched Parker's Market slip past, where Robert bought peaches every Tuesday, Gracewood Chapel, where I held his funeral, the park where I pushed their strollers. Brian talked about his school, Melissa about some gala, Grant bragged about his new Tesla, as if they hadn't just buried me alive. When we arrived, Autumn Hollow stood smugly with its fake flowers and forced cheer. A woman named Haley greeted us with a bright smile and dead eyes. Room 214 was small, sterile, and suffocating. They hugged me like it mattered, told me they'd visit soon. They didn't even stay for dinner, and when the door clicked shut behind them, I finally cried. Not for the room, not for the home, but for the children I never really knew. I cried myself to sleep that first night, quietly, so the staff wouldn't hear. I wasn't ready to be one of those residents, the ones who whimpered in the dark like abandoned dogs. It wasn't the bed, or the antiseptic walls, or the sound of someone coughing endlessly down the hall. It was the betrayal. That's what undid me. I'd sacrificed decades for those kids. Late nights, second jobs, compromises no one ever saw. And they dumped me here like I was expired milk. But grief doesn't linger with me for long. I woke up on the 15th morning with something sharper than sadness, something hot, like electricity in my spine. Resolve. If I couldn't cry my way out of Autumn Hollow, I'd plan my way out. So I started watching. The staff rotated on a tight schedule. Naomi, the nurse assistant, worked mornings. Sweet girl, maybe 25, always asked how I was feeling, but rarely waited for a real answer. Raj, the night supervisor, had a quiet gentleness about him. He once slipped me 2 extra cookies during snack hour with a conspiratorial wink. And then there was Daryl, the janitor, always whistling jazz, always pretending not to notice anything. But I saw how his eyes lingered when people thought no one was watching. The other residents were a mixed bag. Some had truly slipped, gentle souls who no longer knew what day it was. Others? They were like me, angry, lucid, and just trying not to scream. The first person who saw me wasn't staff. It was her, Maxine Alvarez. Call me Max or don't call me at all. Was sitting in the common room swearing at a deck of cards. Short silver bob, red lipstick like a battle flag. Massive turquoise rings clicked against the plastic table every time she slapped a card down. You've got that. My ungrateful kids dumped me here. Look, she said, not even glancing up. I blinked. Sit, she added, still fanning her. Cards. Tell me your story. And I did. I told her about Sycamore Lane, the house, the betrayal, the lie about the power of attorney. I told her how I hadn't even picked my own damn photograph to bring with me. When I was done, Max leaned back and let out a low whistle. Bastards. All of them. No offense, I muttered. None taken. Mine's a bastard too. That night, Max dragged 2 more chairs to the card table. She introduced me to Ruth Carter, a retired accountant with arthritis and a glare that could curdle milk. She wore her compression gloves like brass knuckles. Then came Loretta Shaw, dignified, graceful, but with a fire in her eyes that said she'd burned bridges and not once looked back. A former civil rights attorney, she moved slower than most, but every word out of her mouth was deliberate and devastating. They'd all been dumped here, too. Max's son sold her condo when she broke her hip, pocketed the rest. Ruth's niece moved her in and promptly disappeared to Oregon. Loretta's daughter claimed her neighborhood was too dangerous, but really, Loretta said, she just didn't want me telling her husband to stop talking with his mouth full. We started eating together, playing cards, walking the garden path behind the facility when the sun was kind. Then came the wine. Max poured it from a mouthwash bottle with a wink. Courtesy of Daryl's wife, liquor store discount, paper cups, room 214, midnight laughter. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. One night, after our second round of boxed Merlot, I told them everything. All of it. The deed, the surgery, the papers Brian had me sign. Ruth leaned in. Did you actually sign over the house? No, I said. Just that power of attorney for medical decisions, or so I thought. Big difference, she said, already calculating. Do you remember what it said? Loretta raised an eyebrow. Was this before or after the anesthesia wore off? Definitely. During, I replied. That's a problem. For them, not you, she said. Could be voided. I need to see the document, Ruth added. And the deed. That's when Max asked the question that lit the spark. Anyone outside still got a key to your house? Judy Mercer, I said, nearly gasping at the realization. My best friend. 30 years. She has a spare for emergencies. Call her, Loretta said. Tomorrow. The next morning I did. I used the community phone at the front desk, keeping my voice light while Haley watched me from her clipboard throne. Judy, I said, forcing a casual tone. I need a favor. Could you swing by the house and grab a few things? Some old documents, photos. No rush. Bless Judy. She caught on immediately. Of course, Helen. I'll stop by this afternoon. We had a code word, book club, if she found anything. That night, the phone rang in the activity room. Book club meeting's still on for Thursday, Judy said brightly. And I've got everything we'll need. Hope hit me like a warm flood. That night, as we toasted cheap wine in room 214, I knew one thing for certain. They thought they'd buried me, but they'd just built me a launch pad. Judy arrived 3 nights later during bingo hour, right on time. The staff barely noticed her as she wheeled in a floral tote bag and waved like any other forgettable visitor. She sat beside me at the table, smiling too broadly, whispering, "Got it all. Filing cabinet, manila folder, even the envelope from your nightstand, and you were right, they'd already boxed half the house." I squeezed her hand under the table, barely able to breathe. Thank you, Judy. You're a damn angel. That night, the real meeting wasn't in the activity room. It was in mine. Ruth closed the door. Loretta drew the shades. Max stood watch near the hall, eavesdropping for footsteps. We spread everything out on my little desk. Ruth read through the documents like she was parsing tax fraud. They've got the medical POA, all right, but nothing about financial authority. See this? She pointed at the fine print. This power of attorney is limited strictly to healthcare decisions in the event of medical incapacitation. Nothing here gives them access to bank accounts or real estate, Loretta said. They used your trust against you, not the law. I felt the heat rising behind my eyes. They've already started prepping the house for sale. They think they can sell it, Ruth corrected, but they can't. Not legally. Max handed me a paper cup of wine. What now, General? I smiled. We build an army. Loretta made a call the next morning to an old contact from her firm, Peter Sloan, semi-retired but still licensed and sharp as ever. He agreed to help pro bono. "You're not the first person I've seen taken for a ride by their own children," he said over speakerphone. "And sadly, you won't be the last." He drafted a formal injunction to freeze any sale of the house and started proceedings to revoke the existing power of attorney. "We'll need medical proof of competence," he added. "Already handled," Loretta said. "Dr. Fiona Marks did a cognitive eval 2 weeks ago. I had a feeling we'd need it." "You're good," Peter chuckled. "She's terrifying," Ruth muttered. "In the best way." Meanwhile, Ruth helped me open a new set of bank accounts under my own name, totally separate from any my kids could access. We liquidated my personal savings, $197,000, and moved it out of reach before Grant or Melissa caught wind. "We need a buffer," Ruth explained. "Rent, moving costs, transportation, first and last month's deposit. Give us at least $50,000 in flexible capital." "What about you three?" I asked. "I'm not doing this without you." They looked at each other. Max shrugged. "I'm in. If we stay here, they'll bury us in pastel wallpaper." Ruth added, "You saved my dignity. I'll risk my knees for your freedom." Loretta didn't even blink. "Let's call it a class action escape." That night, we started rehearsing my role. "You have to sell it," Max insisted. "The act. Be the sweet, confused mother they think you are." So I did. When Melissa called to check in, I told her I was loving Autumn Hollow. I talked about knitting groups I wasn't part of and meal options I didn't eat. "They even have a gardening hour," I lied, "though it's mostly just dead succulents." "Sounds wonderful," she said flatly. When Grant visited, I upped the ante. I asked the same questions twice. I looked around the room slowly, like I didn't recognize it. "How's work, dear?" "Still good, Mom. Are you still working? What company was it again?" He blinked. "Still the same, Mom. You asked 2 minutes ago." "Oh, silly. Me," I said with a chuckle. "I just get so forgetful lately." He looked smug when he left. I wanted to throw my shoe at his car. They were watching for a decline, so I gave them one. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we built the escape plan. Peter moved fast. "The judge is sympathetic," he told me, "particularly since the power of attorney was signed under anesthesia. He's reviewing your cognitive eval. I expect a ruling within 2 weeks. Judy kept visiting weekly with updates. They've put up a for sale sign," she said one afternoon. "They even repainted the living room. Beige." I asked, horrified. She nodded. "Can you believe it? After all that work you did to pick the perfect cornflower blue?" I couldn't help laughing. That color choice had taken me 3 separate trips to the hardware store. "They don't deserve that house," I said. "And they're not getting it," Judy replied, fierce and loyal. 2 weeks later, Peter called. "The judge has ruled in your favor. The house sale is frozen. The power of attorney is officially limited to emergency healthcare decisions only." The moment he said it, I dropped into the wicker chair I'd managed to snag from the facility's garden. My shoulders slumped. My hands trembled. It was the first time since I arrived at Autumn Hollow that I felt free. "We're not done," Ruth reminded me. "They can still try something worse, like petitioning for full guardianship." "Then we move now," Loretta said. "Before they get any ideas." Max was already smuggling out her jewelry and favorite books in a suitcase Judy had brought. "What's the plan?" she asked. "Family weekend," Loretta said. "Too much chaos, not enough supervision. We slip out the side like retirees on a field trip." "And go where?" I asked, breath catching. Ruth smiled. "Sedona. Desert air, artist community, and the last place your kids would look," Max said. "Perfect. And we already have a house picked out," Loretta added. "Short-term rental. I used to represent the property manager's cousin. We'll get a deal." That night, while the rest of Autumn Hollow watched an old Western in the rec room, we sat in Max's room, drawing blueprints of our new lives with pens and fire in our eyes. They thought I was too old to fight back. But I wasn't just surviving. I was planning a revolution. The day before Autumn Hollow's annual family weekend, I received a call from Melissa. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to let you know, we're not going to make it this weekend. Grant's got a conference, Brian's got the kids, and I have that charity gala." "Of course, darling," I replied sweetly. "Enjoy yourselves." Her absence was a gift. Without their prying eyes, we could slip away unnoticed. That Friday, while staff were busy decorating the common room with paper flowers and prepping finger sandwiches, Max, Ruth, Loretta, and I executed our plan. Judy arrived at 4:45 p.m. in her dusty Subaru SUV, trunk empty, and music softly playing. Daryl, the janitor, gave us the signal. A slow walk past the staff station with his mop bucket and a quiet nod. He held the door for us. "Weekend retreat, huh?" he whispered. Max winked. "You know it. Each of us had one suitcase. That's it. No goodbyes. No fuss." As we shuffled down the back corridor and out into the service alley, I felt my chest tighten. Not from fear, but exhilaration. We were doing it. Actually doing it. Judy drove. The four of us crammed in like sardines, laughter rising like steam from a teapot. "Can't believe we're doing this," Ruth muttered as we turned onto the highway. "Believe it," Loretta said, flipping through, our rental documents with her glasses perched on her nose. "Lease is signed. Keys are under the planter. We're set." We drove through the night, the stars watching over us. The desert stretched out like a warm promise ahead. As we crossed into Arizona, the first hints of sunrise painted the sky in hues of gold and peach. It was the most beautiful morning I'd seen in years. Sedona welcomed us like an old friend, red rock formations catching the light, the air dry and fragrant with sage and pine. Judy dropped us off at a small adobe rental tucked at the edge of town. White walls, tiled floors, a bubbling courtyard fountain, and enough rooms for all of us. Max claimed the sunniest room. "This'll do," she declared, tossing her suitcase onto the bed. Ruth and Loretta shared the master, fitted with a walk-in shower and wide doorways perfect for Ruth's walker. I chose the smallest room. Cozy, quiet. It reminded me of Robert's old sewing room, where I once spent hours mending, quilts and humming along to the radio. After unpacking, we all sat in the courtyard, still in our travel clothes, cups of coffee in hand. "We did it," I whispered. "We're not done," Ruth said. "Now we build the wall before they try to storm the castle." The next morning I called Peter Sloan. "I'm ready. Sell the house." He didn't ask questions. He knew better. "Market's still hot. I'll get it listed this week. We should have offers in days." Then I called the bank. Closed the old accounts, moved every cent to new ones we'd set up. During planning, completely outside my kids' reach. Ruth oversaw every transaction. By day 3, the messages started. First from Brian. "Mom, where are you?" "Autumn Hollow says you're gone." Then Melissa. "This isn't funny. You could be in danger. You need supervision." Then Grant. "Call us back. Now. We're contacting the authorities." I let them all go to voicemail. Max played them out, loud in the kitchen as she poured her coffee. "Ooh! Hear that panic? That's the sound of people realizing they're not in charge anymore." We laughed, really laughed. On the 4th day, Peter called with updates. "We have 5 offers. Highest is $75,000 over asking. All cash, no contingencies." "Accept it," I said instantly. He hesitated. "Your children are trying to block the sale. They're claiming you're not of sound mind." I smiled. "Send them the neurologist's report." "And remind them," Loretta added from across the table, "that interference in a legal transaction backed by a medical assessment could be considered elder abuse." Peter chuckled. "Already done." The next day, Grant called again, this time with desperation curled into every syllable. I answered just to hear the fear. "You're making a mistake, Mom." "I already made the mistake, Grant," I said, softly, "when I trusted you." Click. 2 weeks later, the house sold for $875,000. After Peter's legal fees, setting aside taxes and transferring funds, I had just over $800,000 sitting safely in my name. It was time for the final strike. Drafted 3 identical letters, on crisp paper. Informal tone. No warmth. Each one was delivered by courier, requiring signature confirmation. "Dear Grant, Melissa, and Brian, by now you are aware that I am no longer at Autumn Hollow. What you may not know is that I sold the family home legally, with full mental competence, certified by Dr. Fiona Marks. See attached report. This letter is not an explanation. Explanations are earned. You've earned silence. The proceeds from the sale have been placed into an irrevocable trust. None of you will inherit a cent. The money will fund the Helen Bennett Foundation for Elder Justice, offering legal and financial support to seniors who've suffered betrayal by their own families. You chose greed over love. I choose dignity over blood ties. Do not contact me again. Any legal challenge will result in counter-litigation for financial exploitation of an elder. You've lost more than a house. You've lost your mother. Helen Bennett." I sealed each envelope. No return. Address. No way for them to trace me. Max read over my shoulder and clinked her wine glass against mine. "And that's how you burn a bridge without lighting your dress on fire." We toasted that night in the courtyard, the stars above Sedona blazing like applause. They had taken my house. I had taken back everything else. The morning after the letters were delivered, I sipped chamomile tea in my sunny courtyard, watching hummingbirds flit between the sage bushes Max had planted. The quiet was delicious, peaceful, earned. The phone rang only once that day. I didn't answer, but I recognized Grant's number. No voicemail this time, just a missed call. I imagined him holding that thick envelope, reading each line, realizing there'd be no inheritance, no second chance, just silence. And that was the point. Revenge isn't about shouting. It's about removing access. That week, I contacted Peter Sloan again. "Let's move forward with the foundation. I'll draw up the paperwork," he said. "Name? The Helen Bennett Foundation for Elder Justice." We registered it within the month, using the storefront Judy had found near the Sedona Arts District, a cozy adobe space with just enough room for a front desk, 2 offices, and a meeting room. No beige, Max had insisted. If we're doing this, we're doing it with color. We painted the walls sunflower yellow, hung local art. Ruth insisted on adding potted plants in every corner. Loretta brought in a vintage typewriter for decoration, to remind people what we're fighting for: dignity, permanence, the right to write our own stories. Our first employee was a sharp young lawyer named Leah Moreno. Stanford graduate, 32, fierce, passionate, and personal. My abuela. Died in a facility just like the one you escaped, Leah told me during her interview. Her son, my uncle, sold her house while she was still alive. Told her she was too far gone to understand. She stopped eating the next day. I hired her on the spot. We started small, just consultations and support groups. But within 3 months, we'd already helped 15 seniors across Arizona reclaim power over their lives. One of them was Martha Jennings, a farmer's widow from Prescott. Her daughter had convinced her to sign over her land in exchange for a promised cottage on the back lot. Once the papers were signed, she was shuttled into a converted garage. We got the land back, and Martha moved into an apartment with actual heating. Then came Richard DeVoe, a retired professor whose nephew drained his savings under the guise of caregiving. We recovered the funds and had the nephew arrested. Every win fueled me. Every victory stitched another piece of myself back together. 6 months in, we expanded, opened a second office in Flagstaff, then a third in Phoenix. Donations poured in. Media caught wind. NPR called for an interview. People magazine sent a photographer. And then one afternoon, an envelope arrived. Not legal-sized. Not courier-stamped. Just a small white letter, addressed in shaky handwriting. From Brian. Inside, a single page. Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. What we did was unforgivable. I told myself we were protecting you, that you needed help, but the truth is, we saw the house as an asset, not a home, not yours, not sacred. And when I saw your foundation featured on the local news last week, when I heard your voice, something broke open in me. Your work, it's saving lives, righting wrongs we were too blind to see. I don't deserve your time, but I wanted you to know. I see it now. I see you. With regret. Brian, I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. Not torn. Not answered. But not ignored either. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. But not every ruin needs salt. Weeks passed. More victories. More stories. Loretta ran our outreach team. Ruth managed finances from home. Arthritis slowing her body, but not her mind. Max stayed on as our loudest cheerleader, hosting wine nights in the office after hours, loudly cursing every damn parasite in a suit who tried to exploit someone's grandmother. My own life flourished. I bought a modest adobe home near the center of town. 2 bedrooms, wood beams, clay tile roof, and a walled garden where I planted roses that burst in defiance under the desert sun. Max moved in with me. Her snoring could shake roof tiles, but I couldn't imagine home without her. Ruth and Loretta found homes nearby, and we rotated dinners like a family. Our family, chosen and forged in fire. On the 1-year anniversary of my escape, I received another letter. This time, from my granddaughter, Emily. She and her brother, Jason, were both in college now. She was studying social work. He, environmental science. The letter was hesitant, but sincere. Grandma, we didn't know what happened. They told us you needed supervised care. We didn't know about the house, or the lies. We saw your interview, and we cried. If you'll allow it, we'd like to visit someday. To know you, not through their version, but for real. Love. Emily, I cried when I read it. Then I emailed back, briefly, cautiously. We started exchanging messages, then phone calls, then finally a lunch at a little Sedona cafe. Just the 3 of us. They were nothing like their parents. They asked questions. They listened. They apologized. Not for what they did, but for what they didn't know. By the end of the meal, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, not for reconciliation with my children, but for legacy. They hadn't buried me. They'd accidentally planted the seed. 5 years after my children left me at Autumn Hollow with a suitcase and a fake smile, I stood in front of an auditorium of attorneys, advocates, and senior citizens. At the National Conference on Elder Law, I wore a dark green silk blouse, Max's favorite earrings, and the pearl necklace my daughter Melissa had mailed me 2 years ago. No note, just a small velvet pouch marked with the words, "These belong with you." I took a breath, stepped to the podium, and began. They thought they were writing the final chapter of my life. What they didn't know was, they were handing me the pen. The applause that followed was long and thunderous. Not polite, not performative. Real. I spoke about autonomy, about betrayal, about the hidden epidemic of familial exploitation, where the most painful thieves aren't strangers but the people who used to call you mom. Afterward, as I stepped off stage, I spotted a man in the back. Grant, standing in the shadows, clapping slowly, eyes wet. I gave him the smallest nod, then I walked away. I didn't invite him to the reception. I didn't. Look back, some things end, and that's okay. The Helen Bennett Foundation for Elder Justice now operates in 12 states. We've helped over 1,000 seniors regain control of their lives. We've published national guidelines on senior autonomy, helped change legislation in 3 states, and created a legal hotline available 24/7. Our office in Sedona grew into 3 adjoining storefronts. We painted every room in colors Max would have loved: turquoise, sunflower, adobe red. I still run things, though I've stepped back from the day-to-day. Leah Moreno, our first employee, is now executive director. She's expanded the program into community colleges, teaching the next generation how to protect the people they're destined to become. On my 75th birthday, we launched a national campaign called Still Here, Still Ours. The message was simple: aging is not erasure. That night, Emily and Jason flew in to surprise me. They brought chocolate cake, flowers, and framed photos from their childhood that I'd never seen, pictures their parents never cared to share. We laughed, we cried. We ate too much cake. We didn't talk about Grant or Melissa or Brian. That was our unspoken agreement. Instead, we talked about the future. About Jason's work in climate resilience. About Emily's dream to open a nonprofit for women aging, out of the foster care system. "You're the blueprint," she said softly as she hugged me. "You showed me how to build something from brokenness." Not long after, Ruth passed away, peacefully, in her sleep, with her ledger balanced and her mind clear. At her memorial, I spoke through tears. Ruth Carter was a woman who made sure every decimal lined up. She didn't just manage money. She preserved dignity. She wasn't just a friend. She was a lifeline. We planted a desert willow in her honor. It stands tall outside our office window, whispering strength every time the wind blows. Loretta still visits every Sunday for tea. Her body moves slower now, but her words, just as sharp, just as powerful. "Keep going," she tells me. "They still need you." Irene passed first, 2 years after our escape. Max. Loud, brilliant, impossible Max. We scattered her ashes in the courtyard behind my house, among the roses she'd insisted could grow in the desert. They did. They still do. Her turquoise rings sit on my bookshelf beside a photo of her smirking on our Grand Canyon trip. Every time I walk past, I swear I hear her voice. "You're not done, Helen. Keep planting." This year, I published a memoir. Second Blooming hit the bestseller list within 3 weeks. Book tours, interviews, morning shows. At a reading in Chicago, a woman in her 70s clutched my hand with tears in her eyes. "You gave me the courage to say no," she whispered, "to stop being quiet, to stop being erased." That's the power of stories, not just the ones we're told, but the ones we dare to tell for ourselves. Sometimes I still think about Sycamore Lane, the house they thought they could take, and how their greed planted the garden I live in now. Sometimes I still miss Robert, his slow smile, his hands in the dirt beside mine. But I believe, wherever he is, he knows. He knows I kept blooming. I'm 76 now. I wake early. I drink my tea in the courtyard. I tend my roses, and when the Arizona sun sets over the red rocks, painting the sky in fire, I sit quietly and think, they thought they were locking me away. But they unlocked something instead. They thought I'd wither, but I became a storm. They buried the woman I was, but they planted the woman I became. Thanks for being here. If you're listening, if you're hurting, if you've been dismissed, discarded, underestimated, know this: you are not finished, you are not forgotten, and you are not alone.